Well, it was certainly a weekend to forget if you are an Alabama fan. Of course, Mike Johnson, Simone Eli joining you on Alabama football head-to-head as we very quickly recap the loss to Vanderbilt last Saturday and look ahead for the Tide as they prepare for South Carolina. Let's go head-to-head. Welcome in, everybody. Mike Johnson, Simone Eli here, joining you for another week of college football. Alabama is the number one ranked team. They go to Vanderbilt in a game that, Mike, you said, I'm just going to say it to you. You can tell me I told you so, but you told me that this was not going to be just some easy win. This is not I think you said it's not your granddad's Vanderbilt team. I think it was your exact quote, something like that. And boy, were you right in the extent. I don't think you thought that the Tide would fall against Vanderbilt, no doubt. But, man, what a battle, and one that Alabama fans wish they could have back.
Yeah, it turns out the sun actually did rise, so it's good to see today. And I was shocked Sunday when I woke up and the sun was actually up. So, yeah, it's a good thing. And I can't give myself full credit. It's not like I called for Vanderbilt upset, although I'm not sure who in their right mind would have done that before this game. But when you look at just gritty offenses and well-oiled machines, Vanderbilt played, I think, their version of like a perfect game. Like they executed everything perfectly. It was almost like, Simone, they were trying not to create explosive plays so they could win the time of possession battle just that much more. And obviously that had a ton to do with the outcome of this game. There were a lot of ups and downs. I don't think Alabama played that poorly at most positions. I think they struggled at a couple of positions, and it was kind of amplified throughout the rest of the team. And unfortunately, when you have a defense that can't get off the field and, the things go the way they did on Saturday, you come up with a monumental loss to a team like Vanderbilt. But I don't want to go any further, though, without giving credit to Vanderbilt. I don't know if enough of that has been done on the national scene, talking about this game. Crazy upset, embarrassing loss. Vanderbilt's a good football team. They deserve all the credit. Credit to Clark Lee and everybody else involved in that program, because it is a big win and they definitely deserved it.
Yeah, and it seemed like it was almost like everyone knows that Alabama is going to be, whatever their opponent they have, their biggest game, whether it's a rivalry for Alabama or not. But it seemed as though Vanderbilt came in kind of licking their chops for this opportunity. And when you have a team that is high-spirited and highly motivated and they jump out to a 13-0 lead at home, you start to go, okay, like we need to settle down. I don't think anyone thought all is lost in that moment. Of course, for Alabama, we've seen ebbs and flows in games, just like we did the week before against Georgia and Bryant-Denny. But at what point did you start to go, okay, like this is not going well today? Was there that moment, or was it not until it hit 0-0?
I had hope until it hit 0-0. I think on the tipped ball pick six that they had to made it 13-0, I thought, well, that's not good. Like you go down by one touchdown on the road in one of these kind of sleepy games, and like I think you can come back in that. You have an explosive offense. I think Jalen Milroe played well. I just think that for whatever reason, we could not scratch and claw our way back. And you look at the amount of first downs that Vanderbilt had, and I just mentioned time of possession. It just seemed like we couldn't stop them from getting 5 yards, right? And when you look at that as a whole, no matter what the rest of the team is doing, if the front seven can't stop them from gaining 5 yards on the ground, with all the eye candy they have, the misdirection, and how good they actually are at running that offense, that's when I started hitting the panic button. And I'm like, there was at no point did I lose faith that we might be able to win the game.
Sure.
But there was definitely a point where I said to myself, I don't think we deserve to win this game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair. That's fair. Yeah.
And that might actually be even worse. When you look at it, it's like, Bama's had losses over the years. Johnny Manziel in 2012, where he tips the ball and he turns in a circle and throws it at the back of the end zone, or the Ole Miss loss where it hits off 2 Bama defenders and a guy catches it in stride, or the kick six to Auburn. This wasn't that game. Like Vanderbilt absolutely deserved to win. They were more physical up front offensively. Our defensive front seven, like I said, did not have a match for it. I did not think that our linebackers played terribly well or physically, and that was the most concerning part to me. So, like I said, there was just a point in time where I'm watching the game going, we just don't deserve to win, and that's unfortunate.
When you look at kind of the reaction that we've seen on social media, and this happens in any time that things are just not going, in a way that exactly fans want to see, it isn't necessary to hit the panic button on the season, on Kane Womack, on why is Malachi Moore acting out at the end of the game? Are things not going the way they're supposed to be behind the scenes? All these questions that come with losses. I think we've seen this in the few times that Alabama has lost over the last few years, which isn't very many, but every time it has happened, it's people start to question, are things the way that we want them or the way that we hope that they are in the locker room? Are those questions running through your mind? And if so, is it all lost at this point? I think I know the answer, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, right.
I would like to get your reaction to this.
No, well, I mean, look, all those questions are definitely running through my mind. I mean, you see some people are like, DeBoer is not the guy for this job. I had a friend of mine text me and say, DeBoer is Dan Mullen. I'm like, let's just slow down a little bit, right? I mean, like we don't have to go that far just yet.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that DeBoer is Nick Saban 2.0, and I wasn't saying that after last week. I think you kind of have to remove yourself from the situation. Fair. And I think the biggest thing, Simone, is just to understand how many different things are coming together in this, right? Kalen DeBoer takes this job. He didn't bring Kane Womack with him. He hired Kane Womack, right? They didn't recruit Malachi Moore. Malachi Moore was on the team, right? So all these things are kind of coming together, and all these pieces and all these different guys learning this new situation and, kind of feeling things out. I was disappointed with how our defense played, obviously, but that's a well-oiled machine. And on the flip side, and I said this to you last week, Diego Pavia comes over with his offensive coordinator and also Jerry Kill, who's a part of that staff at New Mexico State. They all come over to Vanderbilt. It's not just like they got a transfer quarterback. All those guys know each other. They know how this offense works. They know how it's supposed to be run. On the flip side, you don't have that at Alabama right now. So, that's one of those things, continuity, I think, that kind of raises some red flags. The Malachi Moore situation, I think, is the most concerning thing that I've seen in a long time in Alabama. And, I've said to a number of people and obviously talk on the morning radio about it, a lot of guys that were at that university when I was there, when Nick Saban was hired after my second year, we built that foundation that it's supposed to look like, of what it meant to wear that crimson uniform under Nick Saban and accountability and all the things that come with it, because we had guys like that before that. And we needed them because we didn't have a lot of talent on that roster. And Nick Saban famously says, when I can get rid of you, I will get rid of you. And you kind of got built up from the ground up and had a lot of high character guys flow through the university. So to see the tantrum that Malachi Moore had, I'm not going to bury the guy and say I'm not a fan of his anymore. And I want him to kick off the team. But it was the most disappointing thing I saw on Saturday. I've never seen that at any level of football, the tantrum he threw on the field. And that's about as unfortunate as it could possibly be.
Yeah, I agree on all parts. And, we did see the apology, which I think is a standard sort of thing that you need to put out there and make sure that you're backtracking a little bit, for lack of a better word, I guess. But I do think that, we've all seen Malachi Moore. He grew up in the Birmingham area, and I covered him in high school. And of course, he's been just a total, this type of, perfect citizen, so to speak, for Alabama for years. And I don't know. It's one of those things where I think that as a fan base, you hope that people can be forgiving and say, this is not who he is. This is not representative of his character. And this is also a guy who wants to build his draft stock. I think that's part of the reason why he came back. He wants to win a championship, and he has a C on his chest for a reason. And so nobody's perfect. We're still talking about young men in high stressful situations who feel like they have let down a fan base and a team and a program that has been built up, like you said, for years. You helped build that foundation and that standard a long time ago. And so I think that hopefully people can be a little forgiving as he, works on himself and moves forward.
Yeah. And I think that's fair. And I'm trying my best, like I said, to do that. And I think everybody is. I think everybody is entitled to their opinion. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer kind of coming out and, kind of tiptoeing around it, saying, he's doing all the right things now. I think that adds another layer to this entire conversation. But I'm with you. I think that Malachi Moore deserves a second chance. I don't know that it doesn't warrant a suspension before that second chance comes. Okay. But like I said, I've never seen anything like that. And it's it stinks. And I think that you're right. I think he came back to kind of improve that draft status. And let's be honest, too. A lot of times when you see guys act like this, specifically on offense, be it a wide receiver, it's like, hey, I'm not getting the help around me, so I'm going to, kind of throw a small tantrum. To be honest with you, I don't think he played very well Saturday. And so maybe that's part of, kind of the attitude we saw from him, because he was picked on at times, got lost in coverage at times. I thought he opted out of contact a couple of times. So I hope that his tantrum involved the fact that he knows that he didn't play very well either.
Yeah, absolutely fair in every regard. We talked a little bit prior to doing the show about what the silver lining is. Is there a silver lining as Alabama now looks ahead to South Carolina and really the back half of the regular season, which is crazy, by the way, because we're entering the second week of October. Like, where did the entire year go? Where did the football season go? And how am I already buying Christmas presents? I don't know. But like, it's just crazy to think that this year has flown by in the way that it has. But is there a silver lining, so to speak, for this program as they move forward into the bulk of their SEC schedule? And we know that all of the goals and everything lies ahead, and they certainly control their own destiny as well.
I think there is. I think there are actually some bright spots to take away from this. I thought that Jalen Milroe in the passing game played extremely well. I was a little bit frustrated with some of the things offensively, but the passing game was not one of them. Jalen Milroe, even though he throws the pick six, was not his fault. You get a weird kind of bounce, and the guy, catches it in stride. You read the stat column, and you see, oh, he threw a pick six, and you think he made a bad throw. I thought he continued on his trajectory of actually becoming a well-rounded quarterback and being able to make some of the throws, and also putting guys like Ryan Williams up to bat that continue to, kind of make explosive plays. I thought there were definitely bright spots in the running game as well. I'm not happy with the consistency and the patience that we've displayed in the running game. I think Cole Kublik said it really well on the broadcast on Saturday. Only 4 times in this game did Bama run back-to-back running plays. Right. And 2 of those times on the second play, they ran for a touchdown. And I think that when you have the offensive line we do that is as good as they are and the explosive running backs that we do, you have to lean on that a little bit more. It can't be, well, they stopped us for a 3 and 4 yard gain, so we can't run the ball on the next down. It's just not that way. We have enough home run hitters that carry the ball in the backfield that I want to see the consistency and patience from the play calling aspect. But yeah, I think there was plenty of silver linings. I think a lot of guys did step up and play well. There wasn't a ton of blown assignments or blown coverages, just schematically what they were doing to us defensively. They were able to kind of out physical us and keep us off balance. But I thought Jalen Milroe played an extremely good game, and I think he's continuing to build what we think he can be in the second half of the season.
Yeah, all good points, Mike, no question. As we look ahead to South Carolina, Alabama will return home, of course, to host the Gamecocks. Then it's really the bulk of their schedule, and nitty-gritty of, Tennessee, Missouri, and LSU, all ranked in the top 25 right now. And don't want to look ahead to South Carolina. What I want to do is, put that right in the spotlight and say, how important is this game for Alabama to get back on track, so to speak, whether it's in-house, on the field, maybe a little bit of mixture of both, to do it in the comfort of Bryant-Denny Stadium before they do go on the road on the third Saturday in October and deal with these programs that are all vying for one of those top 2 SEC spots to be able to play in the conference championship game.
Yeah, it's so interesting looking at it, right? Because you're like, man, just about everybody's alive at this point. Nobody's really been eliminated from some of these aspects. I mean, even Vanderbilt with a loss to Georgia State, you're like, well, if they could win the SEC, they might make some noise. I think it's interesting to look at it from a number of different perspectives, but I just think you have to get back to playing your Alabama brand of football. And that starts, like I said, with the defense. I think that when you look at defensively what we've been this year, you've struggled with quarterbacks that can run the ball point blank. And I think that when you go back to South Florida and you kind of put that in the shadow a little bit of what you dealt with Vanderbilt with the up-tempo offense, the pistol, the options and everything else, then you start to become concerned because what do you have this weekend? Lenore Sellers, who will run the football. You have a number of Nico Iamaleava will run the football. There are guys out there through the stretch schedule that will run the football. You had success against Carson Beck. He's going to sit in the pocket, right? You had success against Wisconsin. They're not going to run the football with the quarterback. So when you look at the plus ones for the rest of the year, I think Alabama's defense has to figure out how to defend that. The zone options, the RPOs, everything else where the quarterback can be dynamic with his legs. So that's what I want to see on noon. Can you get up for an early game? I'll be very curious to see from an Alabama fan perspective what the atmosphere is like inside of Bryant-Denny Stadium at noon. This is a fall game. I think the temperatures are going to be okay, right? And how do Alabama fans respond to the loss? I think it's important for fans to wake up, create that atmosphere, and make sure this team gets every opportunity to kind of gets back on its feet as we look down the stretch run.
Yeah, and that's noon Eastern time. So it's actually 11 a.m. Central time for folks who have to be. Yeah, they're really eating breakfast, grabbing their coffee, and getting to the stadium. So it's definitely, there's no doubt. So rubbing the cobwebs out of your eye a little bit when you're getting up for games like that. But we will see what the atmosphere is like here in just a couple of days as South Carolina comes to town. Alabama looks to get back on track Mike, all good points all around. When you think about maybe what this game will look like, I no longer, I don't think I will ever again give a prediction before you, because we've learned what that does in last week when I thought, nope, this is going to be easy. At Vanderbilt, no big deal. And you said, pump the brakes for a second. I think that Alabama wins, and but it's going to be a tight one. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and just give your prediction on this one. South Carolina, Alabama, 11 a.m. kickoff there in Tuscaloosa.
Well, I think as much as Lenore Sellers' legs tend to scare me, and I just talked about the game plan for South Carolina, what I've seen from South Carolina so far this year is just a little bit, I'm going to use the word clunky, right? Offensively, they just don't seem to kind of be in stride. Lenore Sellers has had some really, really good bright spots, but man, they've had some really bad lows. And I think one of their bad lows was this past weekend against Ole Miss. When you look at the fact that they could not get into pay dirt and score a touchdown this last weekend. Not only that, Shane Bieber comes out after the game and says, this is one of the most disappointing losses of my career because of the week of practice we had and the vibe we had, and the operation was smooth.
Yeah.
I thought Shane Beamer was bad this past weekend. If you watch that game, South Carolina goes for a fake punt in a situation where Ole Miss has its first team defense out there, and by the way, has one of the best defensive lines in the country, and absolutely slams the door on this fake punt. I mean, there was a lot of situations in this game that leave you scratching your head, and it's just a clunky offense. I think Lenore Sellers with his legs is going to step up in the pocket multiple times, and he's going to gash you on long runs. I'm just not sure this offense can be consistent enough, much in the way that Vanderbilt was, to kind of keep up with Alabama. I think that Alabama has a ton of success. I will say this, Simone. This might be one of the best defensive lines that Alabama's offensive line will face off this year and for the rest of this year. So I think that's going to be a tough task in and of itself. I look for this game to fall somewhere around 31-10, 31-14. I think this is a get-back game for Alabama because I think they'll continue to be explosive. I think they have the leadership. I think Kalen DeBoer is kind of consistent enough. I don't foresee the 11 Central Time start, like you said, to be quite an issue because I think this is going to be a hungry team. And I just don't think that South Carolina right now has the consistency to get it done offensively. So I think Bama pulls away late, but I can't say this enough. Quarterbacks with mobility who can play inside of a scheme are going to be scary for some time for Alabama fans. Hopefully Lenore Sellers cannot kind of get back on that page offensively against Alabama's defense this weekend, but fingers crossed, we'll see.
Yeah, great stuff, Mike. Appreciate your time. And no doubt, I think that this game is way more about Alabama than it is about South Carolina. And you maybe wonder, did that game against Georgia and just how it went down and the excitement and coming off of that, you always worry about games when you have these huge victories and you go into one of those trap games, so to speak. And again, not to not give Vanderbilt the credit that they certainly have deserved. Right. And they won that game. It's not that Alabama lost that game. They certainly did. But hats off to Vanderbilt, and we will see if the Tide can bounce back. I agree. Similar score that you put out there, Mike. We will see what this one looks like. 11 a.m. Guys, get your coffee. Get out there at Bryant-Denny, and we'll see what the crowd looks like bright and early for the Tide, looking to get back in the win column. Guys, for Mike Johnson, I'm Simone Eli. This has been Head to Head, and we will see you next week for Tennessee.
Brought to you by Alabama Beef Farmers and Ranchers.